Frank. What's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to dominate.
I like death.
Schools, and welcome to Minute 5 of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 groundbreaking horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy. And before we go on, I have an announcement to make. Starting with next week's episode, Minute 6, the podcast will have its own devoted feed. As well as a few days prior, the first 5 episodes will be released for completion. So, a search for Do You Want to Party will bring you directly to the podcast. And for those discovering the podcast after that point, you could go ahead and ignore this announcement. Minute 5 starts with Exit Stage Left and ends with I have seen weird things come and I have seen. Now, for those of you who have already seen this movie and know about this particular scene, you will know that due to the odd occasion from the Movies by Minute situation, well, the minute starts and ends with both Frank and Freddy. They barely appear in the following minute. To begin, we have Freddy finally leaving the freezer. We then cut to the introduction of 90% of our cast now being revealed to the audience. We are now given the first actual musical drop into the movie is basically the song called Nothing For You by TSOL. Now, TSOL, or True Sounds of Liberty, is a punk band from California, which formed in 1978. The original members of Jack Grisman, who was vocals, Ron Emery, guitars, Mike Roche, bass, and Todd Barnes on drums. They're known for dark, poetic lyrics and a blend of punk, gothic rock, and post-punk sounds. In their early work, from 1978 to 1983, they released several EPs and singles on the Posh Boy label, developed a strong following in the California punk scene. Between 83 and 90, the lineup changed and evolved. Jack Grissom left the band and replaced by Joe Wood, later of the Queers. Experimented with new sounds, incorporating keyboards and more complex arrangements, and then released several albums on the Enigma and Rhino labels. In 1990, the original members reunited, and they released new material, including an album, Disappear, from 2001. They continued to tour and perform with various lineup changes. Their music has influenced a range of bands from punk and goth rock to alternative and indie rock, cited as inspiration by bands like The Offspring, AFI, and Econoline Trio. Their music often explores themes of social commentary, politics, and personal struggle, with a strong emphasis on atmospheric, introspective soundscapes. They remain a respected and beloved band with the punk and alternative communities. The song itself, Nothing For You, is from their 1981 EP, Beneath the Shadow. It's a melancholy, atmospheric track with a slower tempo, showcasing the band's ability to create moody and introspective music. The song features haunting vocals by Jack Grissom, with lyrics that explore themes of alienation, disconnection, and social isolation. It is considered to be one of TSOL's standout tracks from their early period, and its dark, introspective sound has made it a fan favorite. Overall, Nothing For You is a powerful and haunting song that showcases TSOL's ability to create complex, atmospheric music that explores themes of social disconnection and personal struggle. But then again, when you're dealing with punk, goth music, what doesn't? Now, as we have this sequence continue on, we are introduced to the rest of the gang, or at least a good portion of the rest of the punks that are involved in this storyline. We have a lineup from right to left. We have Tina, who's played by Beverly Rudolph. At the time, is 20 during the filming of this film. Next is Trash, portrayed by Leona Quigley, who at the time is 26. Spider is portrayed by Miguel A. Nunez Jr., who is 25. Scuzz is next, played by Brian Peck, who is 24. Casey, portrayed by Jewel Shepard, who is 26 at the time of filming. And then finally, Chuck, played by John Philbin, who is 24 at the time. Visually, you can see this is an eclectic grouping of people, from the fully punk version all the way down to the preppy version of this array of friends. You can tell that they are really close and all that, and it's really great to see. The beginning of this whole entire sequence is a shot from a traveling shot as the camera follows the group along this path at the opposite side of the road. It's a completely one shot until we hit a camera jump where the actors are now heading towards camera as the camera travels with them. There's a bit of a quick little jump in the edit as between the two cameras there is a little hop back in sort of motion for both Chuck as he is spinning around after being rejected by Casey with the line about fuck off and die, and the one post that they're walking by just before the cut. Trash is at one point and then suddenly jumps to another point, but it is continue on for the continuous shot. We have a really great product placement of the very deliberately shown orange crush can in Casey's hand. And if you watch near the end of the sequence where they are talking, you should note Spider messing around with Scuzz as Spider runs his finger along the shaved head of Scuzz, and like Scuzz swats it away like a fly or something like that. During this whole entire sequence, Miguel Nunez Jr.'s are like just all over the place, an overly animated character. His arms flailing back and forth, pointing and whatnot. There's a little bit of a physical communication like between Chuck and Spider at one point. It's great to see that these characters look like they are friends. They look like they do hang out, even though they technically look like they belong to different cliques. They seem to come together and work together, which is kind of cool. It's really nice to see this sort of thing this early as the introductions of these characters in this situation. After this, we then cut back to Freddy because, of course, previously Freddy's brought up in conversation, and then we cut back to a shot of Freddy sitting in the office across from Frank, and he's going through a medical supply catalog that is showing off different things that can be purchased for the warehouse. We begin with looking at like a dissected skull that has been separated in all those parts, and he flips through pages to get to something else. And then as the camera pans to see more of Freddy's face in the shot, we are revealed with the first set of boobies in the film. That's right. On the wall behind Freddy, you can actually see like one of those girly topless women posters. She's in black and white to begin with, so she doesn't really stand out that much, but it is one of those girly calendars that has this topless woman on here. But he then goes on to continue with casually asking Frank about seeing the weirdest thing, and you can see a little light come on over top of Frank's head as he really starts to play it up, because we know that Frank's a bit of a joker, but it seems like he has something really interesting to tell Fred, and before we actually find out what he wants to describe, we hit the end of the minute. Now, just one extra note that I'd like to say yet again. I am waiting until I have my guest hosts come in for later episodes to start delving into the details of the different actors and the different people involved in putting together this movie. Once we get into that sort of sequence, I will then go into greater detail about all the actors and their histories and their biographies and all that. However, I have come up with a quandary about this particular situation. Now, if you are not aware of or are aware of, you may not understand what I'm talking about, but if you are aware of what I'm talking about, you will hopefully come to the same conclusion as I am. There is a particular actor in this movie who later on in life turned out to be a not so very good person. And I do not want to bring to life the situation he was involved with, but I also don't want to give out more information about him than is possible. I don't feel like talking about this particular actor really needs to be done just to bring less of a light towards him. If you are so inclined, you can do your research online. It is not that difficult to do. You will see when you bring up this actor, if you do a Google search for him, you will see at the beginning of what description it is will be the reason why I do not feel like I feel comfortable talking about this actor. Now, I will talk about this actor when it pertains to things in this movie, but anything outside of this movie, I do not believe I will approach about this particular actor. Everyone else, I have no problem with. I have no problem going into their histories and all that sort of thing. It's just that this particular actor, I do not want to bring a light to his career. So that is where I'm putting this. It's something that I've been trying to figure out how to approach it. And I even asked a couple of my other future guest hosts what their thoughts are on the idea, and I've come to the conclusion that I will speak of this actor as it pertains to the current role in this particular movie and nothing else. I hope that you understand, and I hope you don't think that I'm copping out of this particular thing, but please do yourself a favor, do your own research, and then if you feel that you have something to say about that, please contact us through our email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com, and we can continue on this conversation there if you want. But for now, I'm going to go with my ruling as I am going to put it right now. According to the script, which is The Return of the Living Dead story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, the revision from October 1983, which is based on the story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Ricci, and Russell Steiner. In this particular version of the script, there is a little more to the sequence where Frank and Freddy leave the actual freezer. They walk, and it is actually in the script referred to as a locker at this point. Outside the locker, Frank closes the locker door. It clicks back open. It has a big, complicated padlock, but it's just hanging in its open hasp. Frank, you gotta close this door good. It pops open. He slams the door hard, and they walk away. After they are gone, the door pops open again. Cut to Frank and Freddy walking towards the office. Freddy, hey Frank, how late we gonna work? Reason I ask is, I got a date at 8 o'clock. Frank glances at his watch. Well, we'll be working for another hour or so, and then we knock off. Who do you got a date with? Freddy, my girlfriend. Frank, what are you gonna do? Freddy, go dancing. Frank, youth. It then cuts to exterior city street afternoon. According to this version of the script, this is the description of the group. A group of 6 punk rockers are walking along the sidewalk in a sleazy, rundown section of the city. They are Tina, Meat, Chuck, Casey, Dee Dee, and Scuzz. Tina is a slender, attractive girl, in a red plastic miniskirt. Scuzz wears a mohawk haircut. Chuck is relatively normal looking. Meat is a tall black lad with a reggae haircut. Casey and Dee Dee are weird but extremely sexy girls. Dee Dee wears leather pants with lots of buttons on them. For the most part, other than the fact that Meat is actually Spider and Dee Dee is actually Trash, pretty much the conversation pretty much follows what we have in the final film. With just a few exceptions, as it is Meat or Spider in this version of the script that says the cops said they would shoot us if we go back to the park. Where in the final version of the movie, it is Scuzz that has that line. And there's an extra line after Casey tells Chuck to fuck off and die, Chuck. Chuck comes back with, will you have sex with me? Casey, go choke a chicken. In addition, Dee Dee, or later on to be Trash, goes, we could go to the Rat Club. Scuzz returns with, nah, they closed it down, and you gotta be 21 now to get into Head Cheese. Now, in the final film, when Casey decides that Freddy always knows where the party is, the actual lines continue on from this point. Tina, hey you guys, that would be really rad, but Freddy's gonna be pretty tired. Meat, aka Spider, also, we ain't got a car. Casey to Tina, how are we gonna get there? Tina, on the bus? Scuzz, shit, I ain't taking no fucking bus. Chuck, Suicide has a car. Dee Dee, aka Trash, oh god, not him. Meat, again, aka Spider, why not? He's got a car. Tina, annoyed, hey you guys, this is just me and Freddy. Casey, excited, right, let's all get Suicide and make him drive us over to where Freddy's working. That is when it then cuts back to the interior warehouse afternoon, with a little more ambiance to the exterior of the warehouse coming into play. Frank and Freddy are sitting at a desk, poring over stacks of shipping orders. Outside, there is a rumble of thunder. Frank, looks like rain. Freddy, Frank. Then we go into the what's the weirdest thing you ever saw, and that's pretty much how this scene plays out in the final script. Over on the commentary track with director-writer Dan O'Bannon and producer-designer William Stout, Dan O'Bannon starts off by talking about how using of the yellow color for the cadaver was something that is actually was seen in actually preserved corpses. And then William speaks up quickly as the crew is walking by the bum. William pointing out his own cameo as the bum. And also Dan is like, oh, that's right, that's where your cameo is. William then mentions that you had me put on 20 pounds of weight and you can't see it in my stomach for that bum role. And then Dan teases him as, I didn't tell you any such thing. You must have been packing in on the food for no reason. Then, after Dan points out to single out Jules Shepard in the group, he then goes on to say how much fun he had putting this group of actors together for these particular roles. And how they really came together as a group when they had the ability to come together as a group to rehearse about a week prior to, which is a very rare thing to have happen. He mentions that from those rehearsals, he wanted to have the type of pacing that Howard Hawks used to get out of his casts on movies like His Gal Friday. Basically going on to mention how he wanted to have the rhetoric of speech going over top of each other and how that sort of thing played out in previous movies. IMDb Random Fact. According to the Internet Movie Database, there are 108 facts about The Return of the Living Dead. This segment brings up 3 of those facts, and we use a random roll to pick them. So, for the first randomly selected fact, it's number 7. The lead pipe that Clu Gulager uses in the movie is actually made of rubber. He initially used a real pipe, but the crew snuck it away from him and replaced it with a rubber one, as Dan O'Bannon was worried that clues frequent anger and sometimes violent outbreaks. Random fact number 95. Dan O'Bannon recalls a conversation with George Lucas about John Carpenter's Dark Star and its beach ball alien. He was very disturbed. It was the most disturbed I've actually seen him express himself. He said, "It's just a beach ball." I'm going to tell you from this point on, they're definitely not all going to be winners, seeing that technically really didn't have anything to do with the Return of the Living Dead, other than the fact that it was a fact that happened to deal with Dan O'Bannon. And our final randomly selected fact is number 94. The movie was banned in Sweden when explained by the censorship board. Violence in movies was a big no-no at the time in the country. And that brings us to the end of this minute of The Return of the Living Dead and the end of episode 5 of Do You Want to Party? Just remember that starting next week with minute 6, the podcast will have its own individual feed, so you can search for it through the title and enjoy it from here on out. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to tune in next week. You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends.